Let's see, we need to go into the source repo folder. State has changed. Got a couple projects here. There we go. Let's see. Some properties have changed. I don't know what that is. We'll just go ahead and commit those. Just saying we initialized. Let's see. We need to set the upstream and all that good stuff, and then we can get going. And then let's see. That's what I meant to copy. And then I need to do a git push. Oh. Must have, oh, I forgot the U in there. Let's git push U, master. All right, this guy is up on GitHub now. Let's just double check, make sure it got up there, and then I'll push updates as we build. So there we go. So Super Sniper, I enabled a bot on the channel, and I don't know if you just type a message in what you were trying to push link for, then I can help you out with that. So on these show notes, I'll drop this gist in here too. Oh, the URL for the repo? Okay. Let me grab that for you guys. So there's the repo there. And I'll also put the gist in there as well. So the first link there is the GitHub repo. The second one is Steve Sanderson's notes for how to implement this. And let's make sure I still got this on my clipboard. I want to grab the CSS file here. I'm going to go into my project. And then in Solution Explorer, let's pin this guy open just for now. Actually, let me do it this way. Let's see how side-by-side works. Hopefully that looks good for you guys. If you can't read the text here, let me know and I'll switch it back to full screen. But we're going to go back and forth and do a little copy-paste here for the moment. So let's go over to wroot and open our CSS file, and I'm going to paste this code right in here. I'm not going to put it in its own file and all that stuff. This is just a quick demo, so we're not going to get too crazy with how the CSS is organized within the app. We'll just put it right in the root there. The next thing I want to do is grab the tab set. And this is going to be the container parent element for the tabs. And I'm going to come under shared, and I'll create a new folder here. Let's do add new folder. We'll call it tabs. And then I'm going to do add new item, do empty item. So this is a lot easier for me. Let's do tab set CSHTML. And then I can come in and paste in my code here. Now I'm going to do something on purpose to kind of break the tab set. And it's because I want to show off how this cascading value thing works. I'm going to actually delete this cascading values block out of the code. And I'm going to leave it like that for now. And I'm going to save. And then I'm going to fix my camera again, because something with this new setup is making me glow. So let's see what's going on with the camera. Give me 1 second here. Try not to look at the man behind the curtain while I fix this. Boy, that is like way overexposed. There we go. That looks a lot better. I was just like glowing in the dark down there in the corner. Back to the coding view. All right. You also might notice down here in the center of the screen, we have some subscribers now, and I want to thank the 2 subscribers that we have, and we'll hopefully have some more, and we've got some cool power glove emojis and whatnot, and that's what that number's for, is the number of followers. We'll grow that over time, and we've got some, I don't know what I'm going to do with subscriptions and all that yet, but I'm sure I'll figure out something cool and fun to do with everybody. Let's see. Now we've got our tab set. I've deleted the most important piece of it, because it's kind of like I'm going to do kind of like a unit test, for lack of a better term. I want to see this fail, and then we can understand a little bit better what it's doing. And let's do another empty file. This is going to be called tab.cshtml. And this is going to be the child component. So the component that actually is the tab itself. So let's save this. And we need to create this iTab interface now. So we'll go back in here, do add new empty file, iTab. That'll be a normal C# file. And we only need this part here, public interface iTab. And this is going to implement a render fragment called child content. And I can explain why it's in here once we get going. It'll make a lot more sense. Once we have all these pieces in place, we can talk about why they're all there and how they work. So the last step is to create the tab set. And we'll do that on our index page. So we'll actually use the components that we just wrote and open the wrong index. This is the bootstrapper. There we go. Want the one under pages. And we don't need any of this stuff anymore. We'll come in here. And then I also need to mention, I'm doing this in Blazor, or sorry, yeah, server-side Blazor or Razor components. So I'm running this server-side right now. And I wanted to do that because I have full debugging. And I want to be able to see errors when they occur without looking at the console and all that good stuff. And for all intents and purposes, it works exactly the same as it would in WebAssembly, just we get some nicer features. It also runs a little smoother on my system for some reason while I'm streaming. I've had the CPU get pretty pegged while I'm trying to run and debug the WebAssembly versions of this. So let's go ahead and start this guy up and see what we get. And I am expecting an error because remember I took out that cascading property. And we're getting a build. There's going to be some warnings, which I think I'd either need to see if there's an issue for on GitHub, or maybe we need to post one, ask Steve why the parameters are throwing this warning. But we'll get into that as well too. So remember, Blazor is a experimental framework, and it is only in an alpha or beta release right now. This is 0.70, and they've been doing about one a month. So it's only been about 7 or 8 months this thing's actually been out. So a lot of these errors and things that we see are pretty expected. And this one is on purpose. So I took out the actual new feature, this cascading parameter element that is around the unordered list here at the top. And I did this for a reason. I wanted to show this fail, and we get an exception. And it says object reference is not set to an instance of an object, and that's because this tab, we're in the tab component, the tab is trying to call onto the parent, the container, which is tab set. So tab set is here. It's trying to call on tab set a method of add tab. So it's trying to add itself to the tab set. And since I took out that element that surrounds the tab set where the child content exists, where those tab elements are placed, it cannot communicate with this parent anymore. So that's why it's getting a null here. So if we look at this cascading parameter of tab set, so it's the type is a tab set, and the property name is container tab set. It's currently null, and it's not being set because I removed that element that was wrapping. So doing this and giving it a value sets that property that is currently null. So if I say value is this refers to the tab set instance that we have. And once we set that here, that value will then get set to this cascading parameter tab set of container tab set. So that's how that works. And then once we get the reference to it here, we can then call the methods on it from within on init and call these functions as well that bubble up and do tab remove and set active tab. So let's do a reboot here of the application. And let's do stop. And we'll restart. And now that error should go away. And hopefully purposely firing that error helped everybody understand how that feature actually works. So let's see what we get. And we see our application is loading. And now we have a tab set that we can click between two different tabs. So the tab set is communicating with these tabs individually and setting the active status. And let's look and see how that actually works. So on tab set, we have a property or field called active tab. And we also have a couple functions here. We have add tab, remove tab, and set active tab. And each one of those takes an interface of iTab. So we're passing in the tab. It checks to see if the active tab is null. If it's not, it does the set active tab method and continues to pass that tab in. And then we can see set active tab actually sets the value and then calls state has changed. Now, the individual tabs are calling these methods because they have a reference to the parent through that cascading parameter. And when the component, the child component is added to the page, it actually calls add tab when it's initialized. So when the tab initializes, it grabs the parent instance and it says add tab and it adds itself. And then that kicks off the set active tab and state has changed for the tab set. The same thing happens when it gets removed. When you click on the tabs, so when we're clicking from tab to tab, and I'm going to keep accidentally clicking Visual Studio Code open down here. Go back to our browser. When I click here on this tab, I'm actually invoking this activate, this on-click activate method. And that also calls up to the parent instance and says set tab active, or set active tab, and then passes itself in. So that's how this is communicating upwards to the parent. Also, let's see if I can find this here. This is also very interesting. We have inside of the display part, so inside of each tab, we have this content section, okay? So inside of that content section, let's look at our code again. That's being set by this active tab, and then it checks to make sure it's not null, and then it displays the child content. And this is actually, let's see, active tab, child content is coming from this tab here. And what's interesting about this is I have child content here as a parameter. And in most components that you've probably seen so far, that child content is usually rendered up here somewhere. In the case of this tab, the child content isn't rendered at all within the tab itself. This is only the tab portion that's up here at the top. If we do inspect here, you can see, come on, inspect this element. I don't have to navigate to it. All of these list items and this link is everything that is inside of this unordered list. And these don't contain any of the content. The content is below the tab inside of this div. So it's inside of the div body that's in the tab set. So what it does is it finds the active tab. Remember, these are bubbling up from the child component into the tab set. And then if it has one that's not null, it just displays its child content there. So this active tab.child content is not this content, but the one that is in here. That gets me to the underscores that we're finding, these undersquiggles, the warnings that are being thrown. We have the concept of a parameter in Blazor. Those are usually private or protected. So we get this undersquiggle thing that says component parameter child content is marked as public, but component parameters should not be public. So why is it here and why is it public? The reason that it's here and it's public is because it's being implemented through an interface, and it has to be public in order to be used through the interface. So it's kind of a catch-22. You can't have the interface without it being public, and it's telling you that it can't be public or it shouldn't be public and throwing warning. So there's that. That's something, I don't know if I'm sure the team probably knows already that this is happening. There may already be an issue. I haven't looked for it yet. I don't know if it's worth raising the issue to the GitHub repo. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious. And Steve Sanderson wrote this code for the demo. I'm sure he saw that this is happening, and there'll be some kind of change made to fix it, I'm assuming. So that's there. Just wanted to explain why it's happening. I tinkered around with this a little bit to try to add some additional functionality to it. It did not work too well, and I'm not sure why. I will probably bring it up on a later show. What I was trying to do is, in a tab set scenario like this, what you actually usually have in something like this is you need to interact with the ability to programmatically set tabs and say when the user does a certain task, interact with something on the page, it will automatically switch to another tab. So we can, at runtime, change tabs without the user clicking on them. So I was trying to get a collection of the tabs and implement some kind of way to change tabs programmatically. And that just resulted in the entire thing not displaying. And it's not throwing any errors, that sort of thing. So hopefully I can work on that and show it on another show. But I want to get to some machine learning today because I like doing machine learning stuff, and I wanted to see during November how much machine learning that we can learn together and implement with Blazor, and I thought that would be fun. So I'm going to get into some Azure ML Studio here next. Unless anybody has questions about what we just looked at, want me to try anything with the tab set here, we do have, for example, this toggle box, which is kind of cool. Where we can click and actually toggle the second tab in this list. So this is a pretty interesting thing that Steve threw in there, and I think it's more to show off the flexibility of Blazor than it is to necessarily say that this is something that you would implement in a tab situation. But what's really cool about this is in the third tab, there's an input that is just bound to a Boolean value. and it's using this if statement within the child content to switch that tab on and off. I think the powerful feature and the takeaway that's being explained with this example is that if you look at something like I want to say Angular and definitely tag helpers for ASP.NET Core. If you have a tag helper in ASP.NET Core, there's a very strict set of rules around what can go inside of this child content. With Blazor, that doesn't seem to be the scenario because we can actually put just regular Razor code in here and it works. So this is very cool, and I would say this is more similar to a React style of building out components and being able to do things like this. So I think it's a worthwhile demo to put in there. But again, it's not as much of a practical tab component thing that I think you would use. In the other demo code I was tinkering with adding some more robust tab functionality, this actually got to be a sticking point because when you're setting indexes on these things and you pop a tab in the middle of these items, the indexes get out of order. So there would be a lot of work to do to make a fully featured tab control with all the bells and whistles that you would expect from a tab interface. So there's a lot of work to be done there. So let's move on to something new. I don't see any questions coming up in chat, so I'm going to move on to the Neural November bits of the episode here. And I want to talk about an article that I wrote. It is currently on developer.telerik.com. And this may move soon. This is actually an older blog post